let's go and see some things that you might need to know if you want to deploy at some point CVO on AWS and Azure. So let's go with a few basics. So let me give you some background on my experience. I've been teaching and consulting NetApp technology since 2007. I've been also teaching and doing consulting services for AWS since 2019. And as you can see here, I have some of my active certifications. I'm an authorized NetApp instructor, and also I'm an authorized AWS instructor as well. Okay, so let me show you what we have for you guys on this quick webinar. We're going to see a few details on what CVO. CVO, by the way, stands for Cloud Volumes ONTAP. Then we see the resources needed so you can deploy CVO. And we're going to see some resources on AWS, on Azure as well, like the VNet, the VPC, the Subnets, the security groups as well. And then we see some CVO use cases. And finally, we end with some CVO-General Recommendations. So let's go and start with CVO. So CVO, guys, stands for Cloud Volumes ONTAP. It's like an ONTAP VM, let's say, like an ONTAP select that you can deploy in a public cloud. Right now, NetApp supports CVO on Azure, AWS, and GCP as well. And we can do so many things with CVO. As you can see, we can take snapshots. We can do cloning. We have deduplication, compression, theme provisioning, and CVO supports 3 protocols. You can see we have NAS and we have iSCSI, and then also we can enable replication with SnapMirror and SnapVault. So it's like a VM, let's say, an EC2 instance that we can deploy on the public cloud, and then we can do almost anything that you can do with any ONTAP software. Right now, if you want to, you can go with CVO 9.9. It came out this month, by the way. I will give you some details about 9.9. But if you want to know more, go and check the NetApp support site, and then you can go and see more details on CVO 9.9. Okay. Now, let's talk about the capacity of CVO. So the max capacity we can get on CVO, as you can see, it's 368 terabytes. But that depends on the license that you get. As you can see, we have different types of licenses. But if you go with the last one that we have here, the BYOL, BYOL, by the way, stands for Bring Your Own License. Okay, that means that you need to buy that license from NetApp. And CVO, since 9.7, it supports multiple licenses for the same VM. So if you get, let's say, 2 licenses, then the max capacity of that CVO is going to be 368 times 2. Okay, so the only way you can go past the 368 terabytes is if you go with the Bring Your Own License. And that means, once again, that you need to buy the license from NetApp, and then you can go past the 368 terabytes. And again, they will give you 368 terabytes by license. So let's go and see some details on CVO. And let's go and start with AWS. So some updates that we have on 9.9. As you can see here, now you can configure up to 24 SVMs. We used to go with only 12 on AWS, and we used to go with only 1 on Azure. Okay, so now it's a huge change that you can deploy now up to 24 SVMs. That's the way we can share the space with the end users. And now CVO supports, on AWS, it supports the GP3 this time. Okay, we used to go with the GP2 for many years. Now it supports the GP3, and that's the lowest cost SSD, so you can balance the cost and performance for different workloads. And since ONTAP 9.9 also, on the last update that we had like 2 days ago, then you can see CVO no longer supports SC1. Okay, so you can go with GP2, GP3, SC1, IO1. Those are different drive types that you can deploy on AWS. But before we get to more details on AWS, let's go and see some things that you need. That's the main goal of this webinar. So step 1, guys, you need to create a VPC. A VPC, it's like your data center in the cloud. And each customer can have up to 5 VPCs per region. Now, AWS has more than 20 regions now. So You can deploy, once again, up to 5 VPCs without, let's say, any approval. If you need more than 5 VPCs per region, you can talk to AWS and they can give you access to more than 5 VPCs per region. But 5 VPCs, I think it's more than enough. Again, a VPC is like a virtual site that you can deploy in the public cloud. So 5 data centers, 5 sites within the same region, I think it's more than enough. Now, when you deploy a VPC, and VPC, by the way, stands for Virtual Private Cloud, then you have to decide the IP ranges that we have on that VPC. You can see we have an example here. And if you go with /16, you get more than 65,000 IP addresses within your VPC. Now, that IP range, that's something you can decide. You can say 192.168, and again, you can do whatever you want. And then once you have the VPC, you can deploy subnets, okay? Now, a VPC, it's isolated from other VPCs, from other accounts in AWS. It's going to be defined by the range of IP addresses, and then you can do, you can launch instances into your VPC, for example, CVO, and also you can deploy Cloud Manager as well. Now, a VPC should contain subnets, okay? And now let's go with the next topic here. And oops, let me go back before I get to the next one. So we need to have subnets. How many? Well, it depends on how many let's say, customers, tenants, teams, projects you might have. But most of the times when we deploy subnets, we deploy 2 different types of subnets. We deploy a public subnet, and also we can deploy a private subnet, okay? Now, things that we can deploy on the public subnet, for example, a website, a web page, a web server, okay? That means that it can be accessed from the outside. When you deploy, let's say, a VM or an instance or a CVO or a cloud manager on the public subnet, you get always a public IP address, and you also get a private IP address from your VPC and from that subnet. When you deploy a VM, an EC2 instance, a web server on the private subnet, you only get a private IP address by default. It can be customized, but private should be for the backend application and public should be for the front-end application, okay? So the recommendation, guys, is that you deploy your CVO on the private subnet so no one outside your network or your VPC can access, let me fix the typo here, no one outside your, let's say, network or your VPC can access that CVO. Okay, so that's step 1. Now, step 2, we have to configure something called security groups. And security groups, that's the way that we can allow or deny access to, let's say, to an instance or, yeah, it's going to be to an instance. Okay, I will show you one more in just a few moments, but that's the way we can secure access to an instance. For example, CVO, or a Windows host, a job host. It can be also a Linux host, okay? AWS, just like any other major cloud, they have so many instances. They call them instances, but it's like a VM, okay? It's like a VM, again, Windows, Linux, CVO, Cloud Manager, and they have so many instances that you can deploy. And the way that we can secure the access, it's using security groups, okay? You can see we have an example here. We are choosing the protocols that we allow. We are going to allow HTTP and SSH, and those are the only 2 protocols that we can allow. And then we can choose a source that can access that instance using that specified protocol. Now, the second thing that we can also, and we should enable, guys, is something called network access control lists or network ACLs. And that's the way we can configure and we can allow or deny access to a subnet. So let's make a quick review. Step 1, VPC. Step 2, subnets. If you want to configure security at the subnet level, that's something we do with network ACLs. Then we have the instance, like a VM again, And then if you want to control access to that VM or that instance, that's something we do with security groups. So the recommendation, guys, should be always use both network ACLs and security groups. And if we compare them both real quick here, you can see that the security group, it operates at the instance level, again, like CVO or let's say Cloud Manager. And the network ACL, it operates at the subnet level. The security group, it allows, supports only allow rules, and the network ACL supports allow and deny rules, okay? And security group, it's stateful, and the network ACL is gonna be stateless. The security group, when we check all the security group rules before we decide who can access, and then the network ACLs are gonna be processed based on an index, okay? So the first rule that we can match, then that's the one that we use on the network ACL. That's again why we recommend you to use both of them so you can have a better security all the way down to your instance. Guys, again, anytime you have any questions, let me know. If you need more details on a specific concept, let me know. If you want me to go deeper, we have enough time. Also, let me know. And you can use the chat window for that. If, again, you have any questions anytime. Now, all those resources, they can be created with something called CloudFormation. CloudFormation, guys, that's the way that we can start with automation. We can create a template. With that template, we can create a stack, and we deploy many resources. Now, the ones I showed you, those are the basic resources that you need, guys. And then you can decide if you want to go with a VPN or a dedicated connection. If you want to go with a VPN, we need to have a VPN gateway. If you need to have, or if you want to go with a dedicated connection, then you need a gateway for that connection. So we need a few more things on the networking side. And then, of course, if I go back, let me go back real quick here. Another important thing that you need to have, if I go to the last diagram that we have here, is that you need to have routes between your different subnets, okay? So we can route traffic between those different subnets. Now, if you decide to deploy your CVO on the private subnet, let's say that you deploy your CVO here on the private subnet, another requirement is that you need to deploy a NAT gateway. And the NAT gateway goes on the public subnet, okay? Let's say this is the public, and then we have here the private. Okay, and then your CVO needs to have a route to the NAT gateway so we can go and we can access Cloud Central and we can get updates on CVO. Okay, so if we make a quick review, VPC, subnets, gateways, routes, CVO, Cloud Manager, and then routes between your different subnets. Okay, so those are the resources that we need, guys, so we can deploy CVO. Now, let me go forward here. And now let's talk about the VPN connection. Now, as you can see on the screen, we have the virtual private gateway. That's the one that we use for the VPN. And then if you are going to connect your customer network, then you need to have a customer gateway, and then you need to have a VPN connection between both of them. Once you enable the VPN, and then we go past the router and different routes that we have within the VPC, then we should be able to access that CVO and shares and exports and LUNs that we can deploy on that CVO. Okay, so that's just a quick overview on some things that you need to deploy so you can install and you can have your CVO up and running. We have a 3-day training if anyone's interested, and then we show you guys step by step. We do the VPN, we create the subnets, we create the VPC, we add routes, we add the gateways as well, and then we deploy CVO, and that's something we do, guys. We are connecting to the real cloud. We go to the AWS console, and then we see how to deploy CVO, single node, CVO, HA, and then also we see how to deploy Cloud Manager as well. Now, how can we choose between a dedicated connection or a VPN? Of course, a dedicated connection gives you way more bandwidth. It's way more expensive as well, but it's way more secure. Okay. you might need to go and check with AWS if they can give you a dedicated connection based on your location. And if you have, if you want to be, let's say, more efficient, and you need to have more efficient connection between your ONTAP system and your CVO, then you can go with something called MPS. As you can see, MPS stands for NetApp Private Storage. And that means that when you talk to NetApp and you talk to the sales reps, they can give you MPS, and they are going to give you a FAS or AFF. They try to give you an AFF. Of course, you have to pay for that system. And that system goes on an Equinix data center, okay? So you need to pay for the Equinix physical space. It's like a cage, let's say. You need to pay for the FAS and the AFF. And then they are going to give you also a dedicated connection to AWS, okay? And if you go with that MPS option, then your latency, it's gonna be expected of 2 milliseconds or less. If you don't go with MPS, we are expecting to see a latency around 5, maybe 10 milliseconds. It depends on bandwidth, it depends on distance, and it depends, of course, on the way that you are connected to your public cloud, okay? But this is a great way to have a very fast, efficient, and a very low latency between your fast AFF and a CVO, and once again, that's called MPS. So now that we've seen examples on both, on a dedicated connection with Equinix or VPN, what's the best way to go? And as I said before, it depends on cost, okay? So a VPN, like a side-to-side VPN, it gives you 2 different tunnels, and each tunnel supports 125 gigs. Now, if you're using a VPN connection to a virtual private gateway, then you can have the speed of both. That means you can get 2.5 gigs on your VPN connection. If you go with a dedicated connection, that the name of the feature, by the way, it's called Direct Connect, then you can get 1, 10, or 100 gigs, okay? And that's the fastest way and the most secure way to connect your on-prem to your public cloud. Now, if I give you a few more details on the dedicated connection, you can see the name again, it's called Direct Connect. You can see the capacity, and you can see what you have to pay for, and they give you hourly rates, okay? So you can see the huge difference between a 1 gig, 10 gig, or a 100 gig connection, and that is gonna be charged by the hour, okay? Now, Cloud Manager. If you are going to deploy CVO, guys, the management should be done mostly by Cloud Manager. And Cloud Manager, it's a free GUI. You don't need to pay for Cloud Manager. You can deploy Cloud Manager on-prem or on the public cloud. If you deploy Cloud Manager on the public cloud, then you need to pay for the VM resources that we need for Cloud Manager. But there is no license cost for Cloud Manager. Cloud Manager, it's like the, let's say, kind of like the system manager for CVO. And with Cloud Manager, we can do so many things. We can enable replication. You can see on the right side, we have here CVO. And that CVO, it's consuming something called EBS. EBS, that's the block storage that we need. And that block storage is going to be provided by AWS. So if we go back to Cloud Manager, if you want to, you can deploy CVO from Cloud Manager, even though we have many options to deploy CVO. But with Cloud Manager, we can enable replication, snap mirror, snap bolts. We can add more volumes. We can add more aggregates as well. And the updates, they should be, the CVO updates, they should be managed by Cloud Manager. Don't try to update your CVO from the CLI or System Manager, because you might impact your system at some point. So Cloud Manager, it's a must-have when you are going to deploy CVO. Now, it's not a one-to-one relationship between both. With one Cloud Manager, I can manage multiple CVOs. In fact, from the same Cloud Manager that we deploy, we can manage CVOs on the 3 major clouds, AWS, Azure, and GCP, with just one Cloud Manager. Okay, so it's not one-to-one as some customers think. Now, Cloud Manager, as I said before, guys, you can see we have 2 examples here, even though we should have here 3. The one we have on the left, it's Cloud Manager in the public subnet. The one we have on the right, it's Cloud Manager in your data center. That means on-prem. And also, guys, we can deploy Cloud Manager in the private subnet. Okay, if we deploy Cloud Manager on the private subnet, we also need to have a NAT gateway, because always Cloud Manager and CVO, they need outside access. We can check for any updates. We can check for any hot fixes as well. And that's why, once again, we have here the NAT device if we deploy Cloud Manager on the private subnet. Okay. So Cloud Manager can be deployed from Cloud Central. So when you get some time, just go to cloud.netapp.com so you can see all the features and NetApp solutions for the public cloud and for the private cloud, some of them as well. So if you go to Cloud Central, then you can deploy your Cloud Manager. And then once you have Cloud Manager, then you can deploy your CVO. Now, we can also deploy Cloud Manager from the AWS Marketplace. Okay, you can see we have the AWS website here. I click on the Marketplace. I type NetApp on the search bar. And then you can see we have here Cloud Manager. You can do a manual install without any keys. Or I think it's easier if you deploy Cloud Manager from Cloud Central. You don't pay for accessing Cloud Central. And those are the 2 ways that we have to deploy, let's say, using a GUI to deploy Cloud Manager. Now, if you want to, you can also deploy Cloud Manager using APIs. You can use Ansible if you want to. You can use Terraform as well. So we have so many ways to deploy Cloud Manager, and then you can choose what's going to be the best one for you. Now, once we have Cloud Manager, we can add a working environment. That's CVO. And as you can see here from the same Cloud Manager, that's a Cloud Manager screenshot. We have a CVO on AWS. We have a CVO HA also on AWS, but we have 2 more CVOs on Azure, and we can manage them from the same Cloud Manager. Okay, so one Cloud Manager, as I said before, can manage multiple CVOs, again, on multiple cloud providers. With Cloud Manager also, we can provision volumes. As you can see on the screen, we are going to create a new volume. We are going to choose the disk type, and that means the EBS type. Again, EBS, that's the block storage that we get from the, in this case, from AWS. And then with just a few clicks, then we can start the volume provisioning from Cloud Manager. So guys, it's so easy to use Cloud Manager. You can try using Cloud Manager and CVO for 30 days without paying for if you go to Cloud Central and you open an account on Cloud Central. And then also we can deploy CVO from the AWS Marketplace. As you can see, we have here CVO for AWS. We have CVO HA. CVO HA, it's like an HA pair, let's say, the ones that maybe some of you know on-prem. And as I said before, right now, you can deploy you can go with 9.9. The way to get to 9.9 is get 9.8, CVO 9.8, and then you can upgrade to 9.9. You cannot deploy 9.9 without going past 9.8. So if you have an existing CVO or you get an existing CVO at some point, you're going to see like a banner that says and asks you if you want to go with CVO 9.9. Okay, again, it came out like maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Now, the CVO pricing, it depends on the instance type, and the instance type or the VM type depends on number of CPUs, size of memory, bandwidth, maximum capacity as well. So once you choose the instance type, and you can see more details on the instance type if you go to the AWS website. Once you choose the instance type, you pay for the CVO software, and then you pay for the instance itself. And that gives you the total price and you can see they charge you by the hour. Okay, that's if you deploy from the marketplace. Now, if you get the license from NetApp, then you have to pay, let's say you still pay for the software, that's based on the license, but then you still have to pay for the EC2 instance, okay? But that's the cost of deploying a CVO. Right now, you can see I'm showing you 9.7p5. You can go with 9.8, or again, you can upgrade to 9.9 if you want. Now, some things I just said, guys, you can try CVO for 30 days. Just go to Cloud Central. You can set up your networking. You can provide the required AWS permissions. Then you can launch Cloud Manager. You can deploy Cloud Manager, and then you can deploy CVO from Cloud Manager. So guys, the GUI option, it's the easiest one, the fastest one also. And again, if you want to, we have a training that shows you how to do that. And we have a 3-day training. So that's a quick overview on Azure, on AWS. Now let's go with Azure. And when we start with Azure, you can see we have a few concepts here. And Azure, the Azure resources are, as you can see, management groups, subscriptions. Once you create a subscription, you can create a resource group. And then once you have a resource group, then you can create resources. Like, for example, databases, the VNets they use. A VNet, by the way, it's like a VPC, but that's the name they use. Most of the cloud providers, they have the same features, but they call them different, okay? But just like a high-level overview, it's, again, management groups, subscriptions, and you get the cost reports based on your subscriptions. The resource groups, you can create as many resource groups as you need. And then within the resource groups, you can create resources. Like, for example, we can create the VNet. The VNet, it's like the VPC, okay? So as you can see on the right side, we also have to choose the CIDR log address. That's the IP ranges for the VNet. We need to create the front-end subnet and the back-end subnet. Now, again, they use different names, but they mean the same things. Front-end means public, and back-end means private. Okay, private subnet, but it's the exact same thing. And also, once you deploy the VNet, and the VNet once again goes within a resource group, then you need to have gateways, like the internet gateway, like the NAT gateway also, or like the private gateway as well. Okay, and then of course we need routes. So it's almost the exact same configuration. I think, and I've seen both consoles, I think that the Azure console, guys, it's way easier than the AWS one. Okay, the AWS console, it's kind of tricky. You need to go and find many things on different places. The Azure console, it's so easy to use, so it's easier to deploy the Azure resources that we need for CVO. Now, you can see here we have the VNets. We can add many subnets. With subnets, we can segment the network into multiple sections. And then if you want to secure the access to your VMs, because now we call them VMs. So on AWS, let's say AWS, they call them instances. In fact, it's called an EC2 instance. On Azure, they call them VMs. I think it's easier, the name VMs, because we're used to that name. And if you want to access your VMs, those VMs, they go inside your subnet. And the way that we can secure the access to the subnet and to the VM, to both of them, it's with something called NSGs. You can see what NSG stands for, Network Security Groups. And then we can allow or deny traffic to the subnet. And then with another NSG, we can allow or we can deny traffic to the NIC of a VM. Okay, so instead of using two different concepts like on AWS, like network ACLs and security groups, they have only one concept here to secure access to both, and it's called network security groups. If I give you a few more details on network security groups, they can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules. We can filter traffic by source and destination IP address, port, and protocol. And Azure creates some default rules in each network security group that you create. And if you want to, you can open, you can close ports, you can add IP addresses that can access or subnets. And again, that's the way that we can allow or deny access to the subnet. And then with another NSG to a NIC that we have on a VM. So as you can see, guys, here we do almost the exact same steps on both clouds, on AWS and Azure. We enable almost the exact same resources. And then once we create all the resources needed, then we have to choose the way that we are going to connect to the public cloud. You can go with a point-to-site VPN. The point-to-site VPN, it's like having your computer with a VPN client and then going straight to Azure. Or the most common one, it's the site-to-site VPN. If you want to go with a site-to-site VPN, that means you are going to connect your, let's say, on-prem to your VNet, or you can go with ExpressRoute. That's the name they use for the dedicated connection. And ExpressRoute, that's something we use also for MPS. So MPS, it's hosting a FAS or AFF on an Equinix site, and then they give you a dedicated connection. Again, the name they use on Azure is called ExpressRoute. The name they use on AWS, it's Direct Connect. Okay. Now, once you choose, let's go with VPNs first. You can see they have different VPN gateway types, and you can see the price they charge, and you can see it goes by the hour as well. You can see the bandwidth, and you can see how many tunnels they can give you. For example, S2S means side-to-side tunnels. You can get 10 tunnels. And you can see on the right side that point-to-side tunnels, you can get 128. If you go with, for example, here, the VPN Gateway 5, you have to pay $365 an hour. The bandwidth, it's 10 gigs, so way better and way faster than the AWS VPN. And then side-to-side tunnels, you can get max 30, and they give you 10 included within the price. The point-to-side, you can get 10,000 tunnels, and they give you 128 by default. Okay, and then you can do the math, guys, if you want to, and you can see it's cheap. It's not free, right? But that's the way you can enable a VPN connection to Azure. Now, the dedicated connection, once again, it's called ExpressRoute. They can give you up to 100 gigs as well, and that's way more expensive. Let me show you some details about ExpressRoute. You can see the bandwidth on the left. You can see the pricing here. And you can see on the right side that it says inbound data transfer, it's included, no cost, no limits. But outbound data transfer, that means if you want to move data from Azure back to on-prem or Azure back to a computer, like maybe a share, for example, you can see it says here none. So if you need to have no limits in or out, you can see data transfer in, no limits, data transfer out, no limits. If you want to go with a 10 gig connection, you can see how much you have to pay. You might pay like 54,000 for that dedicated connection. So it's way more expensive, but it's way more reliable than a VPN. And again, you can choose between both of them. And there's another option that it's called ExpressRoute Direct, that based on your location, they can give you 10 gigs or 100 gigs, and you can see the price, and that's going to be a monthly rate. Okay, so for example, for the U.S. government, they can pay, or they should pay $62,000 for 100 gig connection to AWS. Okay. Now let's talk about some CVO use cases. We've seen resources that we need, guys, and again, if you want to see more details on how to deploy CVO and Cloud Manager on Azure, we also have a 3-day training. And on that 3-day training, guys, we have pretty challenging labs. In fact, on the Azure one, we use APIs. We use Terraform. We use the PowerShell also. And then we deploy all the things needed within the cloud, CVO and Cloud Manager using APIs. We don't use the GUIs in that training. okay? And it's more challenging, but it's way more advanced than using the GUIs. So if we see some CVO use cases, the first one and the most common one, guys, it's to have file shares in the public cloud. Since CVO supports both NAS protocols like CIFS and NFS, then we can replace or we can extend your shares or exports with cloud, and you can grow as you go. And we can take advantage of the NAS features and storage efficiencies. You can see we have here encryption, snapshots, and storage efficiencies. When we say storage efficiencies, we mean deduplication, compression, and compaction. Okay, so guys, it's cheaper if you deploy an NFS export through a CVO than if you deploy an NFS export with EFS. That's the AWS EFS, NFS, okay? Because we have storage efficiencies and then we get space savings. And when we deploy things on a public cloud, we are going to pay for the actual space consumption that we are using, we are consuming from that cloud provider. Another use case for CVO development testing. As you can see on the example, guys, we have on the screen, we have a replication from on-prem to a CVO-A and then a CVO-B. And then from that CVO, we can create clones. Okay? And that's something we can do with Flex Clone. And we can create as many clones as needed. And then if you want to, you can clone the clone. Okay, so we can keep cloning and we can have many, many clones. In fact, now NetApp supports more than 1,000 clones. So we need to balance the snapshots and clones, but between both of them, we can have around 1,023 snapshots and clones. You can mix and match both of them. Okay, so development, testing on the public cloud, that's something we can do with CVO and with the Flex Clone license. Another very interesting use case is that we can do DR. That means that we can replicate to CVO using SnapMirror. You can see here, guys, on the right side that we have CVO consuming EBS. You can see the 3 protocols here. And then if my on-prem FAS or AFF goes down, now we can fail over to your CVO. Okay, so it can be your DR site, and we can add more storage anytime as needed to that CVO VM or that CVO instance. Now, CVO can be deployed in one region, or guys, we can have a multi-region deployment. As you can see also here, we have a CVO1 and a CVO2, both within EU West. And then we have replication to EU Central. So now, for example, one physical site, one AC can fail, and then we can go to the second one. And then if one region goes down, then we can fail over to another AWS region if it's needed. There's another very interesting tool, guys, that you can get from Cloud Central that it's called Cloud Sync. And with Cloud Sync, we can move data, we can replicate data between on-prem to cloud. We can go cloud to cloud, or we can go cloud back to on-prem. Okay? Of course, we can go on-prem to on-prem as well. But if you want to move data from AWS to Azure, you can do that with Cloud Sync, or AWS to GCP, or GCP to ONTAP, or EMC to CVO, or storage grid and CVO. That's something we can do with Cloud Sync. Okay, and that's something, guys, that also you can see and you can request and you can deploy through Cloud Sync. So as I said before, guys, we should manage CVO from Cloud Manager. When we manage CVO from Cloud Manager, we can do, as we've seen, many things. We can deploy multiple CVOs. We can enable replication. Guys, it's so easy to enable replication. We just drag and drop the on-prem to CVO using Cloud Manager, and then it starts a replication. It starts a replication for you. We can do the NAS management as well. As you can see, we are going with NetApp View CVO. We have a few volumes like an NFS Vol 1 on their GP2, and then we can issue it shows you the mount command, so you can mount from on-prem or from your VPC or VNet. And then also you can see we can change the disk type. We can do that on the fly. We can take snapshots. We can restore from a snapshot, or we can clone if it's needed as well. Also, Cloud Manager gives you the cost details. It shows you the volumes, the instances, the cost, and replications that we have created on your multiple CVOs. So the data protection, guys, it's so easy. Again, you can see we discover on-prem, we have a CVO, and trust me, it's just drag and drop. Okay, we drag and drop on-prem to CVO, or let's say CVO1 to CVO2, and then it starts the replication for you. We have to configure like 2-3 steps. So that means we have to go with 2-3 clicks, and then we configure and we start the replication for you. We do the baseline transfer. We create a schedule also, and then we can see the replication details through Cloud Manager. So once we drag and drop, we get a quick summary of the options. We click on go, and then it starts replication for you. So Cloud Manager, it's way easier than System Manager. Okay? If you are a NetApp customer and you have seen System Manager, guys, trust me, Cloud Manager, it's way easier than System Manager. More use cases, we can enable data tiering. And data tiering, that's something that it's powered by the Fabric pool. That means that if you have a performance tier within your CVO, you can tier to the cloud tier, to the object tier, okay? And if you enable data tiering from Cloud Manager, then Cloud Manager, it's going to create the cloud tier for you, okay? That means the bucket or the container, and that's done also by Cloud Manager, okay? So you can keep your performance tier healthy with enough space, and when we say data tiering, that means we are going to move the inactive data to the cloud tier. So if we see, guys, data tiering on AWS, we can see that we have the EBS volumes, we have GP2, we have the provision IOPS, we have the throughput optimized, and then we can tier to S3 standard or infrequent access or one zone infrequent access. We cannot tier to Glacier, okay? We cannot tier to Glacier. How do we manage the S3 bucket created for the AWS tiering? Now, the creation of the bucket, that's done by Cloud Manager. If you want to do something else with that bucket, you can connect to your AWS console. You can see the bucket, and then you can enable any features within that bucket. But that bucket should be used for the tiering between CVO and the object store. Okay, the S3 bucket or the blob container. Now, when we say tiering, guys, the recommendation, and that's something that it's done by Cloud Manager, it's that your bucket and your CVO, they stay both within the same region. Why? Because if you don't keep both within the same region, when you move data, when you tier data from EBS to S3, you can do that at no cost. Of course, you have to pay for the space consumption on your S3 bucket. But if your bucket, let's say my EBS, it's on, let's say, US East, and then my bucket, it's in US West, on the way out, on the way back, if the users, they want to retrieve any file from that S3 bucket, then you have to pay for the actual data transfer. If your bucket and your EBS, that means your CVO, are in two different regions. If you keep them both within the same region, tiering back and forth, it's going to be at no cost, besides the cost that you have to pay for the actual space consumption, right? So Cloud Manager creates the bucket within the same region always. Now, you can create the bucket manually if you want to, and then we can attach the bucket, okay? But again, Cloud Manager can do so many things for you. It makes things way easier, and it's a requirement to always have your Cloud Manager up and running so we can manage your CVO. if we see, guys, data tiering here on Azure, you can see we can go from the premium or standard storage. You can see SSDs, HDDs as well. And then we can tier to the hot storage tier or to the cool storage tier as well. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. You can use the chat window. Now, let's go with some CVO general recommendations. So your disks and aggregates, they must be managed from Cloud Manager. Now, when you create an aggregate, by the way, that aggregate, it's going to have RAID 0. So guys, you can't forget about RAID 4 DP and TEP. Why do we use RAID 0? Because those drives are provided by your cloud provider, right? So will you be sharing the recording or slides? Yes, Dave, yeah, we will share both of them with you. And then you can get started with your CVO and AWS, okay? But again, your aggregates, they contain RAID 0 because the EBS drives, they have a protection built in on the background. We don't know what's the protection, but we trust that protection. So when you create an aggregate, that's with RAID 0. And again, they should be created or erased directly from Cloud Manager, or guys, you can impact your system at some point. And then one more recommendation, upgrades of CVO, they must be completed from Cloud Manager as well. As you can see, it says you should not upgrade your CVO by using System Manager or the CLI, or you can impact your system. And then if you want to upgrade to CVO 9.9.0 that came out this month, you can do that from the 9.8 release, and then you're going to be prompted to do the upgrade to 9.9.0. Let me go and erase the notes I have here. Now, some things that you cannot enable on CVO. So let's go and see the unsupported features on CVO. So they don't have, because it's not needed, aggregate level inline deduplication or background deduplication. They don't have this maintenance center because we have no physical drives. Those are EBS. And that's why we don't need to go with sanitization or fabric pool. It's called cloud tiering here. We go with fiber channel. Okay, we don't support that. Flash pools, infinite volumes, interface groups, and a few more. Metro cluster, the ONTAP S3 that came out in ONTAP 9.8, RAID 4 DP and TEP, because we have RAID 0, no SP, no snap lock compliance, but you can go with enterprise, no snap mirror sync, no VNets. Now, most of them, guys, are not needed, right? Let's say S3. You have the AWS S3 buckets. We don't need to go with, let's say, disk sanitization, right? Or infinite volumes. It supports flex groups, but not infinite volumes. In fact, infinite volumes, it's an old technology, and it was replaced by flex groups. Okay, so those are some features that CVO does not support. And we're almost done, guys. The ONTAP release summary. ONTAP, CVO 9.9 GA, it came out again like 2-3 weeks ago. Now we have the GA. 9.8 GA came out in January 2021, so it was this year. CVO 9.7 P6, it came out in August 2020. That was the last version before 9.8, and CVO 9.7 came out in February 2020. Okay, and we're expecting to see CVO 9.10 by, I might say, October this year. And ONTAP 9.9, by the way, it's going to be out May this year. And guys, we are going to create a webinar to show you the updates and the enhancements once we get ONTAP 9.9 for FAS and AFF. Right now, once again, CVO 9.9, it's on GA. And ONTAP 9.9, it's expected to be out in May this year. So let's say 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks from now, okay? So as I said before, if you're interested, we have a few trainings. We are getting an update on the AWS portion. We have a 3-day training. You can take that online, of course, since we are going through the pandemic right now. and it should be available in June 2021, okay? We are updating all the courseware, all the slides, all the exercises that we have. And then we also have another one called Using NetApp Cloud Manager in Microsoft Azure. It's also 3 days. And as I said before, guys, it's a very challenging and very interesting training because we use APIs and we use, again, Terraform, PowerShell, so we can deploy Cloud Manager, CVO, and CVO-HA. And we guide you through all the steps on both trainings so you can see how to create all the resources needed and then how to deploy your CVO.